So now I have the pleasure of introducing you to Madeline Enright. And, we have an extraordinary program committee this year whose members have individually taken on some really complex programs. As an example, tonight's program has been Madeline's baby, and I've watched her. She has put in a ton of time, and she has worked really hard to make this program successful. So on behalf of all of us, Madeline, thank you for bringing your energy to the club. And with that, I give you Madeline Enright.
Thank you, Wendy. First, let me just say it's been a pleasure working with all of our authors and our readers tonight, and they have made this program really easy to put together. It is a local program featuring our local authors, I should say, and I'm very excited about it. Our first reader tonight is Janet Harrison. Janet Harrison is a poet. She writes mostly anonymously, and she will soon be publicating a book of poems which stem from her writings. Her writings come from her own personal struggles and her life experiences. She's going to be reading two poems tonight. The first one that she will read is I Am the Mama Now, and the second one is Perfect. Janet's books can be available through Janet if you want to buy one of her poem books. So Janet, here you go.
Okay.
Oh, there we go.
Right, okay. So the first one, as she said, is called I'm the Mama Now. Deliberately left behind, actions beyond unkind, discarded like a useless card, a future already marred by a child's obvious conclusion, a powerful illusion. My parents believe I'm worthless. The world will value me even less. Where can a child go? Nowhere safe that I know, but I'm the mama now. I only endure the abuse I allow. I will protect that precious child so her dreams can run wild. I will help her know her true value, recover from neglect she once knew. Teach her it was their shame and give it back to them again. I'm the mama now. Together we survived somehow. I will be her loving parent, a reflection of love God sent. I won't abandon her or give in to a saboteur. I will comfort her when she feels alone. Teach her she's a diamond, not a rhinestone. Because I'm the loving mama today, and I'll listen to what she has to say. Help her understand she has choices now. Anyone who treats her badly, we will disavow, because I'm the mama now.
Okay, Janet, I think we'll now be reading Perfect.
Right. From the prison of perfectionism to the joy of authenticity, breaking free from bondage of self and learning to love the real me. After years of recovery, I was still running from myself, leaving a partnership with God and others on an out-of-the-way shelf. I was taught that life was something to miserably muddle through. Enjoying life was never something I had permission to do. Who am I to be happy, joyous, and free? I had to make sure no one was working harder than me. I worked twice as hard to feel half as good. Not understanding my sense of worthlessness was based on falsehood. I desperately wanted you to see me as perfect, as if that could possibly be true. I deluded myself for years until I finally came to. Others can see what we're hiding by the way we try to hide it. My behavior was announcing to the world what I couldn't admit. I was screaming, I hate myself, with every action I took. The horrible person I believed I was, to the world was an open book. Through the steps, I've come to love the woman inside. I no longer need to run. There's no monster from which to hide. I had to become willing to let God remove what stood in the way of my usefulness to others. In step 7, there's no halfway. I don't get to choose what's removed and what will stay, but I do get to choose my actions each day. When an action belies a defect, I ask God to take it away. At times, I've begged my higher power to remove a specific flaw. Instead, to see it become an asset, defying natural law. Impression management is an exhausting job from which I've now retired. In humans, as in life, perfection is not required. When put together, the words perfect and person are an oxymoron, not a goal. It's letting down our guard that endears us to others and makes visible our soul. Thanks.
Thank you, Janet. That was really nice. Very, very nice. Everybody's clapping. You can't see them, but they are. So our next reader is Phil Silverman. There we go. All right. Phil Silverman is a published musicologist and a political commentator. He has published a series of 4 books, starting with The Boomerang and concluding with his most recent book, The Boomer's Back. His books are available on Amazon. He will now read an excerpt from The Boomer's Back about a great bus ride.
1953 bus, a rockin' ride to the airport on top of Avalon Mountain, Catalina Island, a feature offered to visitors at the island. A classic bus, Ralph Cramden would be proud. But Ralph delivered passengers to Madison Avenue, not to the top of a mountain. The ferry ride was fun, although I forgot my motion sickness wristbands, so I relied upon ginger chews and ginger ale for the hour ride from Newport Beach. Narrow incline, hugging mountainside, no guardrails, driver has no power steering, straining and struggling to turn wheels, inches to spare, while the driver gives us her life story. Her life, lamentably, was in danger in Singapore. Now 30 lives were in danger not far from John Wayne's house. It was recognizable in Newport Beach as the one with the bowling alley in the front. My breakfast cruller is coming back up my esophagus. Where's my ginger chews? Left my wristbands back home. Duke, rescue us. Intercept this bus. I want to hear, let's go home, Phil and Sherry. Like, you know, when he rescued Natalie Wood from the peaceful Native Americans in The Searchers. Whoa, that was a close one. Not surviving that fall. Wow. The little lady from Rhode Island to our right starts singing Amazing Grace. I'm sweating, and my wife has emptied a full packet of Tic Tacs. Should have had an old fashioned on that ferry, you know. Trying to lose weight, and if I have an old fashioned, I must have it accompanied by a glazed donut. Another call was destiny. Traveled 3,000 miles in a 767 to go down in a 1953 city bus. Hope the tires are not from 1953. Now the driver is singing Amazing Grace. If John Wayne is duetting, we are in a lot of trouble. Lord God, I'm sorry I stole that ashtray from that motel in Cape May. I'm sorry I took home those Bob Seger demos from the radio station. I'm sorry I didn't belt that guy who tried to trip me that time in the bleachers at Yankee Stadium. Sherry, take my hand. Driver, get us to the plains so we can take one home. The end.
Thanks, Phil. Well done. That was well done. Thank you. All right, please mute yourself. Okay. Our next reader is Evelyn Hoffman. Evelyn Hoffman is co-author of a book called Ode to Life, The Love Story, the true story of Holocaust survivors Eddie and Evelyn Hoffman. They wrote this book to memorialize their life experiences both before, during, and after the Holocaust, and how they found their own love story. All of the proceeds from the sale of her book are donated to charity, GiveSome.com, and heroesheart.info. Her book is also available on Amazon, Barnes & Nobles, and Kindle. Evelyn will now read from her book.
Anna had easily adapted the American ways and values with those of her homeland. Making matches for her girls, therefore, was simply something that mothers did around the world. In that context, Evelyn and Eddie met. Their match was a byproduct of a plot that Anna had hatched. The opportunity for family intrigue had just arrived from Paris. Anna made friends easily. One of these new friends was a woman named Suzanne, who had a brother named Roger. The connect was that Suzanne and Roger were also from Paris, and Evelyn and her sisters still considered themselves part French. Roger had also been introduced to Eddie Hoffman a few times, as they were all associated with the same survival community. All of the young people who had come from foster care or orphanages had stayed friendly when they met again in the US, but Evelyn and Eddie were unknown to each other at the time. Suzanne knew of Eddie as she was close to Eddie's cousin Perry. Roger was one of the young people who met Eddie through his sister. Earlier, Eddie had asked about the unusual spelling of Suzanne and Roger's last name. Suzanne told Eddie she had changed her name. Why? He asked. How would you like to be known as Mrs. Schmuck? She asked. No more was said on that subject. Later, when Anna suggested that the girls go on a double date, as far as Evelyn was concerned, she and her younger sister were being given a green light for a night out on a town with a guy who spoke French and another person who had a car. The proposition had the makings of a wonderful night on the town for them. Wouldn't it be great if we could match my brother with one of your daughters? Suzanne had asked Anna earlier, not caring anything about the second person, Eddie. Roger had said that Eddie was his first choice for such a date because he knew that Eddie owned a vehicle. Suzanne knew that he was quite popular with the ladies and a confirmed bachelor. It didn't matter much since this was only going to be one date. Paulette, on the other hand, liked the idea of dating as it was fairly new to her. She was very beautiful and was often the focus of interest for other young men her age. Evelyn was not too happy about going out on a blind date with just anyone, but the girls were excited about going out together, and a night on the town was the gold standard of dating in those days. Also, it was a little lonely on the west side of Cleveland, where the girls now resided, and their experiences in foster care had apparently strengthened their already tight bonds. Oh, if Paulette wants to go, she can have Roger, Evelyn had said. Thinking she was being generous, I will take the older one. Eddie had already gotten enough information about the two sisters to realize that he would be with Evelyn. Oh, I'm older than everyone, he said. And since one is older than the other, I'd take the older one. Well, there was only one double-edged catch. Eddie didn't want to break two dates that he already had on the weekend in question, and it was an hour's drive to the Grossmans. Roger met with and begged Eddie one final time, please, Eddie, I really would like to go out with this girl, but you know how women are. She won't go out with me unless someone takes out her sister, Evelyn. Roger was getting desperate and embellished. She won't go on a blind date with anyone except you. I don't know what you probably got, probably the car. If you can't find someone else, there must be a reason, Eddie said. That's the reason. She won't go unless you go. And the sisters stick together. You've got the Pontiac. It will be fun, and I need you. Fine, I'll be your chauffeur. But just this one date, and if it starts to go badly, I'm going home early. Well, it took some tap dancing, but it was used to making excuses for canceling dates. He was already worried about the dilemma he was facing with two dates on the same night anyway. This way, he could get out of both previous dates and blame his good nature for wanting to help out a friend. On the night of the date, Eddie and Roger showed up to pick up the girls. Eddie took one look at Evelyn and felt as if he was struck by a bolt of lightning.
Thank you, Evelyn. I loved it. Well done. Okay, please mute yourself. All right, our next reader, or author, I should say, is Fred Kanter. Fred is the author of Fred from Fresh Meadows, a Knicks memoir. It is a book about the ultimate Knicks fan, and how his love of the game for the team and basketball permeated every aspect of his life. I should say 100% of the royalties generated by the book, a sale of Fred's book, go directly to the John Starks Foundation. Fred's book is available on Amazon. Fred's book will be read tonight by Alan Previn, a well-known Theater Guild member who has acted in such things as Baby Boomer Blues by Phil Duran and other publications. So take it away, Alan.
September 1975. I was burned out academically by the end of my days at Yale, so my head just was not totally into the new assignments at law school. As an example, we were assigned 2 cases to read for our very first class, which was criminal law. I ended up reading only 1. I had already met Debbie by then. We were in the same criminal law class, and when she heard that I had read only 1 of the 2 cases, she was astounded. How could I do that? What if I were called on? My nonchalant response, what were the odds of that happening? It was a large class. And by the way, back in my day, professors would use the so-called Socratic method when call on students randomly off a class list. So, it's the very first class of the very first day of law school, and the professor walks in and offers a short introduction. And then he peruses the class list before calling out, Mr. Kanter? I sat there stunned. I couldn't believe it, and I just couldn't manage to utter anything. So the professor calls out again, Mr. Kanter. This time I did manage a response. Yes? And this was not a Marv Albert type of yes. It was much less forceful and certainly not enthusiastic. The professor said, please tell us about the facts in Commonwealth versus Ritter. Well, I must confess that I was indeed a bit nervous here, but thank goodness it was the case I had read, and I did know the facts well enough to summarize them. After I did, the professor offered no criticism, so I knew I had done okay. At the end of class, another student came up to me and was almost profuse in his thanks. I was baffled. And then he explained that I had bailed him out because the professor had called on him and he was just practically too numb to respond. The student's last name was Kanter. We went up to look at the class list and sure enough, the professor had checked off Kanter's name, not mine. Borrowing from Phil Rizzuto one more time, holy cow! I did though make sure that the professor was aware of the name glitch and he did correct the class list. So less than a month later, we were given an assignment to do our first paper in another class, legal writing. As with the first reading assignment for criminal law, I didn't exactly move full steam ahead. I admittedly procrastinated. And then, out of the blue, I got a call from a former Yale classmate who was working in the American League president's office. How would I like a single ticket to Game 6 and Game 7 of the World Series at Fenway Park? I had never been to Fenway and was thrilled by the offer. The problem, though, was that there was no way I could get my legal writing assignment finished in time if I decided to go to Game 6. I had unfortunately waited too long to start on my paper, and the Cincinnati Reds were up 3-2, so there wouldn't be a Game 7 if the Red Sox were to lose Game 6. I had no choice but to seek an extension, but what excuse would I give? After consulting a couple of friends, I went to see the professor, who I barely knew, in his office. This, by the way, was still an era where you typically referred to your instructors as Professor X or Mr. or Ms. Y. You did not call them, at least not at the outset, by their first names. I started off with the bottom line, that I needed an extension on the legal writing assignment. I then explained how I consider myself very honest, so I wasn't going to come up with any bogus excuses such as I gave my paper to a typist and the typist wouldn't be able to get it done in time for the deadline. I proceeded to tell Professor Kurlansik about the ticket offer, and I made it very clear. I was debating in my mind whether I should possibly pass up going to game 6 and wait for a potential game 7. But if I were to go to game 6, I couldn't turn in the assignment on time because I hadn't started writing it soon enough. So that's why I was asking for an extension. Professor Kurlancic showed no emotion one way or the other as I laid out the situation. He paused for a moment and then said, "Are you crazy?" He paused again, and I thought, oh my God, I'm about to get an F on my first assignment in law school, and in the process, I have alienated my professor. But when he continued, Professor Kurlancic said that if I were to pass up game 6 just to get my legal writing assignment in on time, he would think I was out of my mind. The end.
Okay, our next reader, or author, I should say, is Sunshine Ludi. Sunshine is president of the Sunshine Performance Club, president of the Fit Brain Club, and Sunshine writes and produces her own songs and stories. Today, she will be reading a delightful and true short story called The Wonderful, Horrible Shrimp.
Chapter 24 of the book behind me, Sunshine Stories 2, contains a version of this story. Now, David is my husband. His children are supportive and caring. With apologies to his daughter, Allison, who planned a lovely surprise for her dad, here is the story of the wonderful, horrible shrimp. Allison called me. "Are you home? There's a package that will be delivered shortly, and the contents need to go in the freezer right away." I was home. I looked outside the door. There was a huge box. I brought it inside, opened it, and found 4 pounds of frozen shrimp. And I noticed they still had their shells on them. I managed to clear some space and place them in the freezer. I tipped Allison and I thanked her. I asked if she had directions, as I had never prepared shrimp with shells on before. She apologized. "I thought I ordered the same kind I had a couple of nights ago. They had no shells. I'm really sorry." "It's okay, Allison. I'll figure it out. Thank you so much for thinking of us." I researched on the internet and discovered there are many time-consuming steps to prepare shrimp with shells. I discovered that some shrimp with shells are already deveined and say deveined on the package. I checked. The packages did not have that magic word. The idea of preparing them out of my mind and thought hopefully, maybe David will forget about them. He didn't. The very next day, he asked, "You know the shrimp that Allison sent? Do you think you could make them for me?" So I set to work. The 4 pounds of shrimp came in 2 bags. I opened one bag and poured half of the shrimp into cold water to defrost them. Once they were ready, I attempted to remove the shells. It took me an hour to peel those 16 shrimp. Then I tried to slice down the back to remove the intestinal tract. It was not easy. Cutting anything with my arthritic fingers is a challenge, and as I attempted to extract the vein with a toothpick per the internet instructions, the vein kept breaking. If you think I swore a bit during the process, you may be correct. I set a pot filled with water on the stove's burner and turned it on high. While waiting for the water to boil, I filled a bowl with ice. When the water was boiling, I removed it from the burner, carefully dropped in the shrimp, covered the pan, and waited 5 minutes. Then I extracted the shrimp one by one and placed them on the layer of ice. By this time, I would have been happy to never see or touch a shrimp again, but I carried the bowl into the living room and set it on David's dinner tray along with some shrimp sauce. He asked, "Aren't you going to sit down with me and eat some of these wonderful shrimp? They're delicious." I looked at him. I looked at the shrimp, and I maybe rolled my eyes a bit as I said, "Maybe later." I did come back, sat down, and ate one. Not bad. I must remember to congratulate the chef. Hey, that was me. The horrible thing? There were 3 pounds of unpeeled shrimp left, 3 more big jobs. Now, I know David loves me. He loves the shrimp and loves me for preparing them. Allison loves us both and sent this gift to please her dad. That's a lot of love. So, when David asks me again if I will make shrimp for him, I will smile sweetly and silently thank Allison for making her dad happy. As I prepare them, you can bet I will swear to myself a lot. Postscript: I served the leftover shrimp to David the next day. He called to me, "Sunshine, something is wrong with these shrimp. Please get rid of them and the ones in the freezer. Don't give them to the food bank. They may have spoiled during transport." Okay. And yay! The end.
Well done, Sunshine. That was cute. And Sunshine's books are available on Amazon. I forgot to say that. Well done. Okay. Our next author is Phil Duran. Phil Duran is author of The Reluctant Tuscan, How I Discovered My Inner Italian. Phil was a Hollywood producer and writer for such shows as All in the Family, The Dating Game, Sanford and Son, Who's the Boss, and The Facts of Life. Phil escaped Hollywood to a 300-year-old house badly in need of restoration in Tuscany when his wife Nancy purchased it as a surprise. Phil's book will be read by Alan Previn. Take it away, Alan.
I had a machete in my hand, and I was thinking about using it on Henry David Thoreau. You know, that guy they made you read in school who popularized the notion that we should find solace in nature. Maybe I was doing this all wrong, but I had been hacking my way through nature all morning, and all I had to show for it were blisters, sweat, and a shooting pain up my arm. I didn't think I was having a heart attack, but if I were, it would have been more amusing than dealing with a hill covered in underbrush so thick it made this little corner of Tuscany look like a Brazilian rainforest. Of course, the land was only part of the problem, because at the top of a hill sat a 300-year-old stone farmhouse we had just bought. Perhaps house was too grand a word to describe this crumbling heap of rubble. In fact, the dwelling was so insignificant, it didn't even have an address. Folks around here simply jerked their thumbs in its direction and referred to it as Il Piccolo Rustico, an apt description because it was certainly rustic and definitely small, just the perfect size for its current occupants, scorpions, and spiders. We had invested most of our savings in this house, but in our attempts to make it livable, we had managed to alienate our neighbors, infuriate the local government, and generally outrage the normally serene citizens of this fair land. So much fuss over such a crummy little house, stone walls splitting apart where ancient mortar had decayed into dust, wood beams so riddled with wormholes they looked like they had been peppered with birdshot. A wide crack running up one of the exterior walls had caused part of the roof to cave in and stove over. There was no electricity, water, or gas, and only the vaguest rumor of a septic tank buried somewhere. Even if everything ran smoothly, we could finance a lunar probe for what it was going to cost to restore this place. I stopped to breathe in a dizzying mixture of rotting humus and wild jasmine, and thought about the chain of events that had brought me here and how this run-down, neglected little house in Tuscany I'd become a metaphor for my life. Call it a late life crisis, but in my mid-50s, I had turned my back on my career and on a way of life that had sustained me for the previous 3 decades. In the process of forging a life here, I struggled to rediscover myself, my wife, and our life together. And like many improbable adventures, it all began with a phone call. Guess what? You're pregnant. I bought a house, Nancy said. What? I gripped the receiver in astonishment. Where? Here, in Italy. I rolled my eyes and whimpered. I think we could be really happy here. Well, I'm happy here, I said. And how could you buy a house without me even seeing it? I had to move fast, but you'll see it now. How soon can you get here? I'm gonna fly all the way from LA just because, yeah, come on, get over here. I can't. I'm still working on this goddamn script, I mumbled as I peeled the foil off a roll of Tums with my teeth. And the pilot season starts in a couple of days, she said, which is how Italians say, come on. She'd been working there so long, she started to think in their language. Just come take a look. If you don't like it, we can always... She ended her sentence there. Always what? Forget it. You're gonna love it. The house is over 300 years old, she said, as if that were a good thing. It sits on a hill full of olive trees with a magnificent view of the village of Cambion. And that's something I want to look at? The view is to die. What about the house? Is that to die too? I won't lie. It needs a little work. What a surprise. But the construction's pretty basic, except for putting in the road. You bought a house on a hill that doesn't have a road? That's why we got it so cheap, she said triumphantly. Now let me see if I got this, I said. In the long history of Tuscany, which has been occupied by the Etruscans, the Greeks, the Romans, the Visigoths, the French, the Spanish, the Austrians, the Nazis, and now the baby boomers, no one has ever thought to put a road up to this house. We'll put one in. We're talking about Italy, aren't we? Yes, she said defensively. You see where I'm going with this? Relax, honey, there's always a way. The sun had dropped behind the mountains, and I sat in darkness. The end.
Well done. Thank you. I love that book. All right. Our next author is Barb Torino. Barb is author of Getting Your Act Together, How to Put the Show into Business. This is a common sense approach, professionally and personally tested on the skills necessary to put the show into your business and professional life. Books are available at Amazon and Barnes & Noble and Barb's website. Take it away, Barb.
Do you ever wonder why actors volunteer to perform in community theaters, rehearsing up to 20 hours a week for no pay? And why do even the most successful movie and television actors often aspire to perform on Broadway? They don't do it for the money. The money doesn't even compare to the money you can earn in television and movies. Learning and then working to perform at your best and being appreciated for your effort is what makes the sometimes difficult journey of a performer worthwhile. Performers perform for the applause. They perform for the strong sense of accomplishment that a successful performance brings. And they perform for the personal challenge. Still, we wonder why we impulsively follow this interest in community theater, an interest that consumes our time, taxes our brains, and tries our patience. And we do it as a form of relaxation outside of the hours of our respective occupations or hobbies. Well, because we know that when the show is put together, after weeks of rehearsal, set construction, publicity, and ticket sales, When the lights go up on opening night, that the show is a good one and the patrons love it, well, then that answers the question, or rather, it eliminates the question. Acting is the reality of doing. It is acting real in pretend situations. Christina Ricci said when interviewed, "I loved acting. It made me feel happy because I'm able to express everything I can't express in my normal everyday life." So places, everyone. All the world's a stage, and all the people merely players, writes Shakespeare. He knew the secret of that success long before our day. The entire world is a stage, and we are on that stage every day. We cannot afford to miss any opportunities to get our act together and razzle-dazzle our audience. Whether you realize it or not, you are on stage all day, every day. And so you must consciously give your absolute best performance, regardless of how you feel. Famous television host Dr. Phil McGraw says on his show, "Behave your way to success." Now, an interesting phenomenon occurs when you learn this technique and you practice it, because feelings are brought upon by actions. You will actually begin to feel the way you are acting. When you act as if, the emotions will follow. The law of reversal states that you can act your way into feeling. Most people wait until they feel a certain way and then act on those feelings. Many people believe that their behavior can be pleasant unless they feel happy. They find it difficult to act in ways that don't reflect their emotional state at any given moment. But the law of practice states that practice develops habits. It takes 21 to 30 days to make or break a habit. Now, creating this new habit will not make you feel comfortable or sincere at first. In fact, it will take all of the acting skills that you possess. The good news, however, is that if you practice acting in the way that you want to feel, then almost magically, you will start to feel that way. To be successful at your work and in your life, you must often act appropriately despite what you feel. Although we cannot always choose our feelings about events in our work life or in our personal life, it's crucial that we consciously choose appropriate behaviors and responses. The next time your feelings or your attitudes start to determine your actions or behaviors, just get your act together, smile, and act as if all is well. Shirley MacLaine in her book, I'm All Over That, says, every day we choose what script we will write for ourselves, how we will play our part, what wardrobe will we wear, and what emotions will we allow ourselves to feel or repress. She goes on to say, I am the writer, producer, wardrobe mistress, star, and director of my own play every day that I live. So ask yourself, what will be your life's show? Will you be a star, earning rave reviews and standing ovations? Get ready, it's showtime.
Well done, Barbara. I really like that. Thank you for reading and sharing that with us. That was our last author. Now it's time for question and answer. I do have a question for Janet Harrison. The question is, when did you write these poems? And obviously you're very brave to have written them about your life experiences. So when did you actually write them?
Okay, so Perfect, I wrote probably around 3 or 4 years ago. And I'm the mama now. I started last year and it has morphed over time and become, I don't like to use the word positive, healthier, become healthier.
Well said. They are very cathartic. I found them to be very cathartic. They emote things everybody feels. So I think they're beautiful poems. So thank you for sharing.
Madeline. Thank you.
Yeah. So we have a question for Phil Duran. Phil, if you're still with us, some people, how long did it take you to settle into life in Tuscany?
Well, you know, it's an odd question because I didn't want to, I mean, I liked Italy. I'd been to Italy a couple of times, but my wife was, what was happening was I was working in TV pretty regularly in a lot of TV shows. And then I got to a point where I'm suddenly 55 years old and I couldn't get a job. You hit a magic point to go up. You hit a point in the thing where suddenly nobody wants you because you're just too old. And it's ridiculous and it's terrible, but that's what happened as me and a number of my friends, my fellow writers, I saw them just peel away and disappear. And so I was pretty freaked out. This is where my show business career was what sustained me for years and years, and suddenly I didn't have it. So I'm trying to figure out what should I do with my life. And my wife was getting worried that I was going to stress myself into a stroke. So she says, I'll tell you what I'm going to do, because my wife was a marble sculptor. She would go to Italy and do marble sculptures and stuff like that. But what am I going to do? So she says, come to Italy with me and we'll make a life. And I said, I like Italy. I really do. I love it. I love the food. I love the people. But the people, I mean, everything is so difficult. You can't have a conversation with anybody because you don't know what they're talking about. And it's just tough. It's just hard. And so we're going back and forth about this. And then it comes along that I over the course of time, I'm wondering what I'm going to do. So I'm walking around Italy. Every time I leave the house, I hear something or see something that's really funny. And I start writing it down in a notepad. And after some days and months of this, I had a big notepad full of funny stuff. And I said, you know, there's a lot of people who are writing books about Italy, a lot of good writers, Under the Tuscan Sun and all this kind of stuff, wonderful writers. And so I went ahead and I read all of those books with the idea that maybe I could write a book about Italy. And even though these people really know so much more about gardening and food and all this kind of thing, but what they don't know, what they didn't have any of them in their books was anything funny. And I thought, I don't know how you can write about the Italians and not say how funny they are. They're hysterically funny. There's a childishness. There's just a thing about them. They like to poke each other and do jokes and stuff like that. And so I said, that's what I have. That's what I can do. So I wrote a book about Italy that had a lot of funny stuff in it, thanks to the people who just saw walking around the street. And
so it's easy to say you settled into life in Tuscany.
I settled into life. Yes, I did. We wound up living there for 10 years.
Did you ever get the road built? Did you ever get the road built?
We got the road built. We got the house done. Everything was done. We put in a swimming pool. They thought we were really Californian, and
there you go.
Suddenly have a swimming pool, but this is what we do. And it was great. We had a wonderful time there. We loved it. And we have a number of friends in Italy. We go back and forth and see them, and they come to us and everything. So it was a remarkable.
It sure sounded like it. So thank you very much. Thank you.
Thanks for having me.
Oh, yeah. So Sunshine, a question for you is, everybody wants to know if you still eat shrimp. You're muted. You're still muted, honey.
She's throwing up.
Not the one with shells on.
Okay. Very good. All right. So does anybody have any other questions? It sounds like everybody enjoyed tonight. I want to thank the authors. The readings were fabulous. Go ahead. Fred, you want to talk?
Yeah. Well, first of all, just a couple of comments and then a question. First of all, really want to thank Madeline because she really put a tremendous effort into pulling this all together. So thank you so much and also Joe for obviously his technical assistance. And obviously, I also want to thank my longtime friend from fourth grade, Alan Bravin, for doing the reading, because I'm not as brave as the other, and I want to commend the authors who read because they were all very good. So, but you'll never see me up on a Theater Guild stage performance because I don't have Alan's talent. So thank you.
Come on, Fred. Come on.
No. Alan knows the traumatic experience I had in 7th grade, so I will never appear in a stage performance.
Very good.
But any case, I do have a question for Phil, just in terms of experience, because I have a friend from Connecticut who did something similar to you, actually is of Italian descent and fluent in Italian, and he renovated a house in Umbria, so the next section over from Tuscany, and he completed it. But he and his wife ended up leaving Italy because they were so frustrated dealing with the local government. So I guess my question really is, in getting all this done, what were your experiences like in dealing with the local government, getting the permits and everything else to make it all happen?
It was impossible. It was basically impossible. We had a house that we couldn't fix anything. We couldn't move anything. We couldn't have a door here. We couldn't have a window here. Everything was an argument. And I'm willing to go. I said, let's get out of here. I'm done with these people. I don't want to be here. She says, no, we're staying. Now, my wife was a hammer. She really was. She was tough. She was beautiful, and she was sharp, and she was tough. And she beat down those guys. She went to the community every single day. And they got sick of, she came in the house. They would quiver when she came in. They were all afraid of her. And over the course of months and months, we kind of got everything we needed. And I don't know how to, I know it's a crazy story, but this is how it happened.
Takes us strong.
Then they become our friends. Then they love this. So I don't know. It's the Italians are all crazy, but then so are we. So it's a good match.
Okay, so we're out of questions and we're kind of running out of time.